Welcome to the Lair of Secrets podcast, a podcast about exploring the sprawling caverns of gaming, hidden treasures of geekdom, and the unexpected intersections of reality. I'm going to hand it over to Ken since we're playing our Cyberpunk RED campaign.
Thanks, David. After a month of downtime, the edgerunners' infamy has grown. As of September 30th, 2045, there's now a 3,500 EB bounty on Atlas, the group's alleged leader. There's also a 2,000 EB bounty for each of the other team members, APT, Angry Bob, and Omen. APT wrote a script so the team will know whenever the bounty went up. Additional research by the group revealed that the bounties were being floated by Brainbank, a startup that serves as a front for various corporations and their bounty hunting needs. The company was largely bankrolled by Zetatech, who maintained accounts for several of its top agents. Leveraging his sources, Angry Bob determined the bounties were placed by Zetatech agent Isabel Izzy Cordaro, who has sworn vengeance on Atlas, or at least that's what you think. With additional backing from Stormhold, whose super cool, super cutting edge, AI driven tractor trailer was stolen and turned over to the Nomads in a previous adventure. Meanwhile, Omen, the Nomad, participated in Rocket Blade tournaments happening around the city, entering as the masked racer. She developed a reputation as a come-from-behind underdog, racking up a number of winnings and earning the ire of fellow racer number 2, whom we shall have to come up with a cool name for, but never you mind that right now. The races are proceeding. Angry Bob got a gig working for Night Pulse, a low circulation but growing scream sheet, covering the Rocket Blade races and breaking a story about pay for play corruption among semi-pro racers. Atlas spent his free time at the Holy Angels Church, occasionally working for the church's protectors, the 6th Street Gang, and trying to allay his complex feelings about having killed a bunch of people and gotten paid for it, and then played with his cat. Finally, as their downtime wound down, APT's fixer Priest contacted her with a job. Her team is needed to infiltrate the ruined Elysium Aeronautics research facility in Old Corp Center and reboot an ancient server located in its rad-shielded basement. The server went offline when the Arasaka Tower was nuked. Now somebody wants it back up. The client is offering 5,000 Eurobucks up front and another 5,000 Eurobucks upon completion of the job. The client will know if the server is back online. So, 2 quick retcons. Originally, in the last episode, it was called Asgard Aeronautics because I didn't actually look at my notes. It's Elysium Aeronautics. The Rocket Blade races, we originally had pitched them as being like a month-long thing. However, then downtime took 3 weeks, which ate up most of the cool Rocket Blade tournament. So David and I talked a little bit about this out of game. And so what I'm pitching it as is like that was basically the amateur races. Citywide, the groundswell, anybody can enter. You pull off your old Rocket Blade skates from when you were a kid, and this year you're going to make it, gosh darn it. And so that took place through September. Then heading into October, you get into the Pro-Am races, right? So now these are like the formal corporate sponsored races. The best of the amateurs are entering and going up against, corporate backed people or people with professional race teams or gangers who got a couple of people together with appropriate cyber tech. So it's ratcheting it up a level. The competition is more fierce. There's more, delimbing is not a word. Amputations. There might be more blood. There might be more tech. There might just be more, the stakes are higher, but the pay is higher. Ultimately culminating in a series of big purse races, like a team race, double race, solo race in a variety of venues, including the standard stadium race, death race inspired type thing, parkour inspired type thing. So, by the end of the month, it's kind of like the Olympics, but like spread out all over the course of these 2 months and culminating with, more of like a series of very high level races, right? So if you had all of the competitions that lead up to the Olympics in like a 2-month span, that's what I'm envisioning. Until we realize that downtime is going to eat up another 3 weeks, and then it's going to go. But in any case, the idea is the Rocket Blade races are still continuing to happen in the background and ratcheting up. And so I imagine the cross city rivalries are starting to get heated up as people like really latch on to whomever their favorite fans are. And there's probably throwdowns as people are starting to trade blows and what have you as they want to back their particular person. Erin, have you thought about what Omen's persona is beyond the masked racer? Like, is she just the masked racer, or is she like trying to actually build up like a persona?
Wrote it down and then promptly lost it. You know what? Zero ID. I kind of like that.
Zero ID. Okay. We're not going to do a lot with rocket races today, but we will be coming back to it. And as I was mentioning before we went online, David, Chris, and I have been like talking about what the rocket races will look like going forward. We've been running them as basically as downtime activities, and I think we might have another one of those as we make our way through the pro-am races. But ultimately, what we want to do is run an actual Rocket Blade race, and we're trying to figure out how to balance like fun with mechanics versus actually like playing through round after round of going around in circles. So
we'll see if we can do a
cool for that.
Tailspire.
Given the probably now becoming life attempts, I'm definitely keeping my identity like hidden. I'm going to be a mystery.
Yeah, there you
go. As much as I possibly can.
Speaking of attempts on your life, at least once since the downtime ended, Atlas has fended off a couple of gangers who are looking to collect on his bounty. It's not like a huge amount of like Eurobucks that are out there right now. I mean, when you get to 20,000, you're probably going to have like some professional bounty hunters that come looking for you, right? But there's probably at this point there's like low level people who are like opportunists who are like, oh yeah, here's this guy, I got his picture, like isn't that guy? Oh yeah, let's see if we can take him down, right? And then Atlas kills a couple of people or like beats them bloody and then goes and like mourns his violent ways with his cat.
My bounty gets to 20,000.
You gonna turn yourself in? Is that what you're saying?
I'm gonna know she loves me.
Love, hate. Yeah, what's the difference, right?
Right, yeah.
She's gonna love you in the way that Sorsha loved Mad Madigan. Punch you in the face. Kick you in the face.
Yep.
I look forward to like, that eventual culmination, right? Where Atlas meets Izzy again and all of the tensions come out.
As she kicks you in the face.
So Josh, we're getting a little bit of like blowback off of your mic.
All right.
Yeah, it sounds
better.
Like if you move too much,
please.
So if you can stop breathing for about the next 2 hours, that would be fine.
Yeah.
And do the TPS reports.
TPS reports. Just do the TPS reports. Okay, so there you have it. You have Elysium Aeronautics is this research facility, Old Corp Center. So for those who are not familiar with the time of Red, the old Corp Center, the entire downtown of Night City was nuked by Johnny Silverhand while he was on a run against Arasaka Tower. And so that basically irradiated the downtown. It's funny, the book goes into like the specifics of what was supposed to happen. Like I guess in the book, the nuke was actually supposed to go off in the basement of the tower and thus would have minimized the radioactive damage to Night City. But instead it went off on like several stories above the ground, like 60 stories above the ground or whatever. And as a result, it became like this airborne nuke effect, right? So, which apparently is somewhat less than dangerous than a ground-based strike. I did not go down the rabbit hole of researching nuclear strikes on small cities, but going off of what they have in Cyberpunk Red, some of the radiation has dissipated, but it still glows, right? And so all of the downtown core center is just like ruined buildings, the corpses of people who didn't make it out, broken cars and vehicles, and just the ruins of what came before. And that was all 20 years ago. So everybody just knows that off of the top of your head, right? Like no one is really going there unless you care less about your life. I would say that it is known that there are people like the poorest of the poor and the most desperate of the desperate and perhaps the most insane of the insane actually live there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's low level radiation, but it's not going to kill you today. It's not going to kill you tomorrow. Maybe it's going to kill you in 20 years, or maybe it's going to kill you in 10 because of cancers or whatever. But there are people who are desperate enough to live in the hot zone. There are also people who go in looking for tech, right? Trying to salvage whatever they can out of the old city. But most people don't want to actually go to the city core if they can avoid it.
Okay.
So this isn't the radiation that gives me superpowers?
This is not the
This is not the 1950s and 60s radiation. This is
okay. This is not
actually
comics.
what.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
what
more the
year
day
is
after
this?
radiation. It's 2045.
2045. Okay.
Yeah, they don't have any of the good radiation anymore. It was all used up.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The giant ants and the giant spiders soaked it all up.
Sure.
Yeah, so I did spend some time like trying to research. There's not a lot of material that's actually goes into the hot zones of Night City in 2045, and so I was trying to get a sense for exactly how gonzo it is, right? In terms, it's not, and it's definitely not like Fallout level. You've got what are they called? They're not Death Stalkers, the giant mutant reptiles that try and kill everybody.
Salamanders?
Politicians?
No, in Fallout.
In Fallout.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Fallout.
Sorry.
Like death
In
somethings.
Fallout.
Anyway,
Yeah, all the politicians
Oh,
are dead in
shoot.
Fallout except for
there's no
few.
mega mutants running around with clubs trying to kill you. There's no like
Disappointed.
hyper intelligent crocodiles who took on humanoid form. But there's definitely mutated wildlife. And there are definitely people for whom it is not doing them any favors.
Fair.
But beyond that, unless your characters have a specific experience, which I don't think any of you do, with life in the hot zone, you're going to be doing research, which I know Erin loves. So that's just,
But I don't have a character good at it.
I do.
Right. So this is going to be the campaign where Erin's like, screw that. No planning. I'm getting my rig and just driving downtown. What are you guys doing?
All right, so we have to plan to go into in a zone that we don't know anything about. Omen looks on over to APT and says, "Get on that, girl."
Yeah. I will do all the. I got to bring up my character sheet.
I will make sure to go and get APT whatever flavor latte she wants, and large amounts of them, at least 2.
Angry Bob will also start hitting the the city net and talking to some of his contacts.
Is APT the pumpkin spice kind of girl?
No, she likes blackest night and sweetest sin.
Okay. Bitter it is.
She likes her coffee like she likes her men ground up and in the freezer.
So dragon's blood coffee. Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly. Black blood of the earth.
Yeah. I'll just pour a cup of oil in there for you.
So I've got, oh God, don't even get me started. All right. So she has a library search, which I can roll to do. So what she's looking for is old city maps, new maps, if anyone has gone in there, because there are crazy hobbyists out there that post things to the net. Go look at the Reddit for exploring the hot zone. But also any old city, diagrams of tunnels, roads, anything that can show anything that she can work into like pathfinding.
Gotcha.
I will roll the library search. Ah, 21 plus 4. And it's in a green box, which means it's awesome.
Wow. Okay. So you know that. So obviously, so there's still public infrastructure back in the day. There were honest to God roads and what have you. And so with a roll that good, you're able to go onto our hot zone and pull. You find not just like the regular cache of maps, but like you find Visit Night City. The City of Dreams, circa 2019, right? Like promo materials before everything went to hell. So you find a whole cache of that gives you a layout of like the notable downtown buildings that you could go and visit and what have you. You find like the hacker's guide to downtown, right? Like publicly available Wi-Fi, like the little niches and what have you that you would wanted to have found if you were touring the city circa 2019. You also you find a number of sort of current maps that point you to. So there are. I did spend some time trying to research how an airborne radiation bomb would have impacted the structural integrity of the city. Didn't get too far on that, so I'm just going to kind of ad-lib it. I'm assuming like when a nuclear blast goes off, right, you've got like most of the windows have been shattered. A couple of buildings, probably like anything close to it, probably you had, if you think about, not to be disrespectful, but the two towers, when they went down, when you had a high energy source suddenly like going up against structural steel, it's not going to do well, right? So a lot of the buildings in the immediate old city center just collapsed because of the blast from the radiation and the heat wave that came off of the bomb. Further out, you have like the air blast, right? So the shock wave that goes from the compressed air spreading out. So imagine lots of windows shattering, even bulletproof, reinforced 2020, preparing for, war with other corps. It still wasn't going to be able to stand up to the blast from a nuclear device. I think also these were probably smart buildings. And so smart buildings probably did not do well when the EMP hit them. So you probably had a lot of and it's California, right? So there's earthquakes that are continuing to happen. We know that in the time of RED, there had been a major earthquake in Los Angeles that flooded a third of the city. So earthquakes continue to be a thing, and without their sort of self-modulating systems online, the buildings are probably more vulnerable to earthquakes than they were before. So it's pretty treacherous. I'm kind of imagining in the movie Cloverfield, giant monster attacking New York, and you've got skyscrapers that are falling over as this thing makes its way through. I'm kind of visualizing that. Now, I think as you get further away from the core, there's less of that, but still not great. So I think your maps are pointing to like big piles of debris, but they're never current, right? Like right. Like it's current as of a month ago because the last crew that ran in went to this particular area or that particular area, but you rolled really well. Sense. So I think you would get like the known intelligence in and around the Elysium aerospace headquarters.
Yeah, no, but I get it. It's not current, but it's probably the best we can get.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of it turned. Sorry, go ahead.
They give really short descriptions of how much devastation there was in the area for old blank block, old city center, old corporate center, and old medical center on 297.
Okay.
By the way, called the hot zone.
To say how big of a blast it was, did it?
On our map, it looks pretty big, or at least the devastation looks pretty big.
I'm just wondering if they had it listed in the game as how many megatons it was supposed to be.
It was a suitcase nuke.
Okay.
So a small one.
I was going to say, it didn't level the entire city, so it couldn't have been too huge.
They described it as like after the bomb.
And given that there's more radiation left over, it was more of a dirty bomb.
So I did not look up what this is, but they do actually give a yield. It's similar to a 1950s Davy Crockett backpack nuke. I don't know if that's a real thing. With an overall yield of 0.1 kiloton. It was prematurely detonated at floor 120 in Key Arasoka's apartment bunker where the Soul Killer lab was located. So it instantly obliterated the towers, splitting them in half and causing them to collapse outward. The entire central city became rubble within seconds, with almost everyone in the immediate area dying instantly. As much of Night City was built on fill, and because of the elevation was originally so low, the nuke caused a minor earthquake that liquefied parts of the fill and flooded the inner city.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I looked this up. The Davy Crockett nuke was a real thing.
Oh, wow.
The yield was around 10 to 20 tons of TNT.
Okay.
It's a range
I guess.
of 15 to 20 kilotons. I'm going to take this and just throw it into the chat for everybody's for curiosity. If you're curious about it, but we don't have to use it in the game.
That's cool to know that. I don't know if that's cool or not. It's interesting. So yeah, the downtown is pretty messed up. So I imagine what you have is a series of notes that you were able to accumulate, APT,
yes.
of basically field notes from the last year, use at your own risk. Buildings have probably continued to shift it. And I imagine that given the occasional extreme weather in and around Night City, plus the occasional earthquakes, it would not be uncommon for people to hear the sound of distant thunder, and it's just another skyscraper going down.
Yep.
David is trying to calm the dog.
The Davy Crockett was not designed to destroy cities, but rather serve as battlefield weapons against enemy troops. So that's interesting. So that's how you can get away with it being just this one small area. It only would have taken out a few city blocks. It's not intended for that. So
yeah,
right.
I was gonna say the Hiroshima bomb was like a 15 kiloton one. It was a lot bigger than that.
Yeah,
0.1 kiloton.
This is just for your little nuclear explosion.
Yeah,
by the way,
it's the tiny one.
Your quaint, cozy gathering of nuclear.
Cozy nuclear destruction.
Right. We should, by the way, did we get radiation suits as part of this thing?
Well, I think so. I'm envisioning this is all part of the research. So it's you guys deciding what you're going to do.
That's kind of what I was going to do, because I don't know what else I was going to do.
I'm just going to say, if we go into an area with low-level radiation, it won't kill us immediately, but possibly get cancer. If we get a high level of radiation, it's immediately dangerous, and every turn that we remain in that hot zone, we are being considered as mildly on fire, which is two points of damage direct to hit points.
I'll take a radiation suit, please.
Well, maybe Omen can go find us some radiation suits while I'm doing
radiation suits are 1,000 eddies each.
Do I have 1,000 eddies?
No. We got 1,000 eddies as payment, and then we had to live.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the client was offering you 5,000.
Do they have radiation suits with holes that we can patch?
Well, so I mean, this is I think do some research, right? So I need to pull up my skill list. I thought I got this together. Hold on.
Can we decide where we get the cancer? Can we get farmer overall radiation suits? I'll take a cancer in my left leg. I just want to protect the core organs here.
Because the little red square on the map, that's kind of where we're going to be at, right? Which is kind of right smack dab in the middle.
Yeah. And a radiation detector is 1,000 eddies as well.
Jeez.
Oh, wait. No, that's a Cyber radiation detector. No.
Yes.
I'm just going to presume it's there and try to plan accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Especially since it looks like we're heading kind of right into the center of the big
Since we could
crater
die
area.
crossing the street in Night City, I don't know that APT is worried too much about radiation.
I mean, do I think... So I think you guys should... So I think you're probably having the exact reaction that people living in Night City have to the hot zone because they don't actually want to go there, and they're concerned about body parts starting to fall off the minute they're exposed to radiation. So I think you're going to need some amount of research to find out what the actual level of threat is, right? Because I think you're basing all of your knowledge on like there's
never having been there.
Yeah, it's like there was like a television show that was referenced in the book. I think it was like The Real Nomads or something like that, which is about like nomad street racing in the old nuclear city center, right? And so of course there's all of these, Hollywood style tropes about what it is, but then everybody agrees that it was not filmed in the city center, even though it was allegedly a reality show, and it was actually filmed on like film sets outside of the city.
Since when is reality TV not based in reality?
Yes.
Wow.
You are saying that, you said the word nomad, so now I'm going to find out if any nomads do go through this area.
Hells no, girl.
I have an idea. Since
no, I'm kidding, right? Like I think, like everybody else, I think that everybody basically at one point or another, if you are some sort of an edge runner or you're trying to get by, is going to do a run into the hot zone because there's something there you want to get, right? And so I think when the nomad, and you have your nomad allies whom I can pull up in my NP. Hold on, I have my NPC sheet.
I'm not going to get too hung up on the radiation suit. It's a character. I'd like to get on with the missions, so if we can find them, great. If not, she's going to...
Oh, and by the way, that was just
when she gets back.
That was the mild... That was like, possibly cancerous radiation, the hot zone, and then there's extreme hot zone, which is even more damage.
We're not.
That's not going to hand out the iodine tabs, I guess.
Yep. Just wrap up in tinfoil. It's the same thing.
So I finally found my index. All right.
Well, if you get, there's a certain type of cyberware that people think protect you from EMPs and radiation. I mean, there's no science behind it, but they think it's like a Faraday cage for your body.
Sure.
I think we're taking iodine tablets.
Yep.
Is there a like a lead kind of? We're just flipping the switch. Lead? That's all that we're running into. I didn't know if there was like something that we were supposed to be taking with us, like taking back, but then I was like, no, we're just flipping the switch to turn the server back on, right?
Yeah,
that is the mission.
We are IT in this situation.
Yeah.
We're going to go turn it off and turn it on again.
I didn't know if we needed like a lead case to carry something that might be super radioactive with us.
You are jiggling the cable.
That all presumes that the cabling like still works too. The server could be humming away contentedly and as the cable is cut.
APT, you might be needing to repair this thing on the spot. So that is something we should prepare for.
I believe APT has tech tools. She is not a tech, but she might be able to convincingly play one on television.
Well, you might want to read your lines for that because...
yeah, I have tech tools. So we'll make do with what we've got.
You can always hire a tech.
That's a real good possibility that thing is fried.
Yeah, but at 5,000 eddies to split amongst the four of us, I don't know that I want to give another cut. This is already expensive.
Yes.
It's 10,000 total. We got 5,000 up front, right?
Yeah, and 5,000 on the back end.
Oh, okay. All right.
Omen, you're able to like meet up with Wrench. That's Danny Wrench O'Connor. He was one of the nomads, the Southern Outliers.
Okay, yeah.
Right. He's one of the guys whom you turned over the rig to. And so, I'm guessing, you guys meet on the outskirts for some coffee, and he's like, hot zone run, like the key is speed. Get in, get out, know what you want, and just spend as few seconds there as possible. That's the way we always handle it. I mean, you could go to Delver Dan. He's always going to try and sell you something. like iodine tablets or whatever, and he's got some patched up suits you might be able to get for cheap. But like, if you're planning on staying there long, you've already made a bad plan. The nomad way is get in, get fast, get out.
All right.
Well, but they're also you can take that with it, like, as he's telling you about it, like all the stuff he's talking about is it is assumed that they have been able to identify like the location of a particular vehicle or a specific tech or something. And so a lot of what they're able to go in and get is like, they know that there's this specific car that has this specific pre-fall tech, pre-time of red tech, that all they need to do is get to the vehicle, hack it real quick and get back out again, as opposed to a more leisurely foray into one of the corporate sub basements.
Okay. Well, he said the magic words. This is the nomad way, so this is the nomad way. We get in, we get out. I'm a nomad, true and true. So, gotta live up to the way.
David, you said, so he had mentioned Delver Dan basically is like a junker who specializes in hack together stuff for all of your hot zone delving needs. There are presumably any number of people who will sell you hacked up sets, but those are the ones that the nomads have dealt with previously. David was you said that Angry Bob was doing some stuff?
Yeah, similar to what APT is doing, seeing if he can get some rumors about, hot areas, especially around the area that we are going to go into. Does anybody have a map or whatever that we could get a hold of that's relatively recent? And maybe just a map from pre-bomb. It won't be accurate, but at least we'll kind of have an idea what was there.
So you're focusing on the rumors, you're focusing on the maps, you're going to try and... I think that would be one roll for each one of those things. So it sounds like you're trying to do more work your network for rumors and what's the current state of the hot zone,
yes,
Old Corp Center versus hey, I wonder if I can find a map.
Let's do the first one. Let's do the what it's currently like, because that's a bit more important at the moment. So if I go by the media rumors, it's library search, conversation, or interrogation. So I was thinking conversation.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Oh wait, that's probably not what I wanted to roll.
Let me know if you need some media interrogation done, though.
There we go. 28.
Oh, damn, you guys rolled good.
I believe I rolled max. 11 plus 1d10. So, yeah, 11 plus a 10, and then another 7.
Dang. That's
so
crazy.
21 and then another 7.
Wow.
Bob's good at talking with people.
No,
you wouldn't know it.
All right. So as a quick go back, Omen, you would have met with Jesse at the Jesse James Kosher Deli, which we had already established was frequented by nomads in our last session. So just a call back to that. Let's see, what establishment are you going? So where are you going, David, to figure out to ask your questions, having your talks, dive bars, media hangouts, that kind of thing? And if so, what is the name of the media hangout?
I think I'm gonna probably ask around in Old Japantown, which is kind of near Old Corp Center, and I've got I think the way that the media stuff works is I would still have access to my lower credibility ranks access and sources. So could talk to a couple of well-known people in the old Japantown area, or a city gang honcho. Probably those are probably specific, but just kind of using my credibility to kind of work my way in toward old Japantown, toward the right people who will, who go in and scavenge and come back out, and asking questions.
Gotcha. Do this.
And letting them know that if they want their name on the city net as part of the thing, that I'll put them in, and if they don't, I will make sure to leave them out.
Gotcha. Let's see. Give me 1 second. All right, so you meet up in old Japantown with a veteran delver named Falco. And
what was his name?
Falco.
Falco.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's got he's got like he's constantly wearing like heavy leather everything. And you can see like there's like clearly it's been lined with, he's got like lead plates that are like sewn into the openings in the leather jacket, right? So occasionally you can see it like popping out in particular areas. He's got what looks like completely beat up and run down chrome, but it's been slathered with some sort of like makeshift material for helping to protect it against radiation. So he looks dirty by design, because dirt protects you from the radiation, is like his approach to this. Okay. And so he's like, if you're thinking of the documentary and like it goes all black and white and he's sitting back and he's smoking a cigar and he's like telling you war stories about, going into the hot zone and what have you. So, so were you looking for like general information, like information specific to the Elysium complex, or to like the hot zone in general? Like which specific aspects of the hot zone were you looking for him to like ramble on about?
He's not going to go directly for Elysium. He is going to ask about that area.
Okay.
So that area of Old Corp Center, he doesn't want people going, oh, someone's asking about this stuff, let's show up there and see if there's anything interesting there while we're trying to turn on a server. So he's going to ask about, kind of that area, what it's like in the Old Corp Center in that area, what's the radiation like there, seeing he's got some radiation gear, built into his clothing, things like that. What's it like being a delver?
Gotcha.
Kind of also getting the personal story of his.
Okay. So, so he's like, kid, you're way too soft to go into the hot zone, but I can tell you some stories that'll keep you out of there. So, look, the first thing you gotta understand is the maelstrom, right? So there's a lot of crazy blippity blippity blip in that freaking hot zone, but they're the worst, right? Major Force used to be known as the Metal Warriors until the Inquisitors came along and slaughtered them all. So they reformed, led by this guy named Warlock, who's a complete badass. And so Maelstrom, they're excuse me, radioactive dust. It's okay. Won't get any on you. So look, anyway, they're all cybered up. A third of them are like like cyber psycho. So you see one, you gotta stay away from them, right? They're based out of Totentaz, which is this is like never-ending party hell in the Burleson Tower Hotel at the edge of the hot zone. It's on like the northern portion of the hot zone, Old City Center, right? Like, so I'd say like don't go and be poking at them. If they party all the time, if there's less than 20 people dying in a night, it's that's not a good night or a bad night. I don't know. It depends on whether or not you're one of the guys who got killed. There's some horrible cybernetic monster that lives in their basement. The normal stories, right? So then you got your scavvers. Right? Because everybody wants to be in Maelstrom. Well, if you're crazy enough to be in the hot zone. Not me, though. Damn. Well, I want to bring some air filters. Yeah. Don't... Look, if you're serious about going in there, don't waste your money on radiation suits. I'm going to tell you something about radiation, man. It wants in, it's getting in. You're spending your eddies on stuff that doesn't matter, right? Just suck it up. Be a real man.
As I'm watching this real man like disintegrate almost in front of me.
The key thing is you got to keep your tech going, man. That's what's important. You can always get some bio blocks to do some radiation damage repair, right? Look at me, man. I'm 40. Living the life.
Look at me. I'm 26.
So yeah. So you got your scabbers, right? And they're like would-be Maelstrom gangers who are just searching the hot zone for old tech and what have you, trying to find some chrome to buy their way into the gang. The Inquisitors, they're still out there. You got Cybertech. They're looking to take you down because of their holy crusade to free people of the corruption of their cyberware. But those crazy guys are everywhere. It's just that they're still gunning for the Maelstrom, which is insane. Anybody who's going to go up against some cyber psycho because they're on a mission from God, well, I don't know. Maybe that's the best people to go after the cyber psychos. I see a cyberpunk, cyber psycho, I run. So, anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. Get a good cigar. Cigar smoke helps mitigate the radiation damage. So it's good. It helps you exhale the particles. That's another reason why you don't want them damn suits. You can't breathe out of them. How are you supposed to smoke a cigar inside of a suit? You just, you can't see. It's a bad time. You don't want to do it. Suits.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get your eddies, man. They're just trying to get your eddies. So yeah. Anyway, then there is a new faction you got to look out for, and I'm going to tell you about these guys because you seem like a trustworthy sort. Who I kind of like you, and you seem like you shouldn't just like off yourself, just like wandering around down there. So you got to watch out for the Glow Boys. These guys worship radiation, basically. They get all chromed up, they get all the biomods, and then they go seek out the worst of the radiation, thinking it's going to I don't know, give them superpowers or something, man. They they think they're going to become like super mutants or something. Like, I don't know. There's no science in their heads, right? They don't understand how radiation works. Not like veterans like me.
Yep.
Blood comes trickling out.
Exactly. Like
in my agent, I have get suits underlined like 8 times.
He a tooth comes out, he wiggles it a little bit. Oh, look at that. I'll take that taken care of later. And pushes it back into his gum line. Yeah, so where was I? Oh, yeah. So, the other thing is people think that there's giant radioactive, scorpions that are going to, drive their spikes through the back of your head. You don't got to worry about them. Koi dogs, however, those buggers got smarter. Just they are... And by, they're just you get cornered by a pack of koi dogs, they'll herd you and they'll kill you. They're damn impressive. I mean, they were smart before the bomb went off, and now they've become expert level koi dogs. You got to watch out for those guys because you see one or two, maybe not so bad. You shoot it, you're good to go. But you see a bunch of them, they've got a plan. The other thing is, and this is kind of, I don't know, some people say that it was some sort of corp experiment in alternative intelligence or whatever, but there are what are those big black birds called? Like crows, ravens, whatever,
ravens?
Right? Yeah. Like they got some mean intelligence to them, and they go after your chrome. Like, there's that old thing that crows like shiny things, but they like really shiny things. I don't know what the hell they're stealing chrome for, but these birds are big, man. Big. Like, big. So, you see some of those things coming for you. You might want to hide your shiny parts.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I appreciate this. Gives us some good information on my story.
How are you pitching this? Were you pitching this as like an intrepid media intends to venture into the depths of the hot zone and reveal the true story, or is this like people who?
I think it's going to be along those same lines as my, this could be yet another documentary. So he's kind of putting together the idea that a documentary about people who go in and scavenge the good from the hot zone. How they get by, how they scrape by, their plight, and yet how they live, sort of thing. And so, yeah, he's asking about this area because he wants to have, the way he's pitched it is he's asking about that area of Old Corp Center because he wants to take little vignettes of each different place, that the documentary will cover. This fake documentary will cover.
So you also learn about a fellow media named 2020, who is the foremost like culture expert on the burning 20s, and like kind of if you think about people who like to do documentaries on like the culture and life of the 50s or the 80s or what have you, right? It's that sort of thing, but
Mm-hmm.
interfused with like the aftershock of disaster. So basically, like he likes to talk about the run up to the Arasaka nuke, and then like how that impacted culture after the fact, and he gets into all the nitty gritty stuff. But he's like he's the kind of guy who would have all of the corporate bobbleheads. From their kid lines, like join Arasaka Corp. Here in your Happy Meal, you get like Street Samurai bobblehead.
Yep.
What was the date that the nuke went off?
2023.
August 23rd or 24th,
Yeah.
2023, because we just passed it.
We just passed it.
And I remember several of us celebrating on Mastodon.
Oh. Yeah, I missed that. Okay. Atlas, are you doing anything?
Right. I guess there's not too much else. They've pretty much got most of the data. Now, whether I know that or not, I don't know.
I mean, you can meet up with one of these guys too to like do whatever thing is they're going to do.
So yeah, there's not too much that I could. I mean, I might be able to just through contacts at the church and stuff like that, and the people that are coming through. Maybe I catch some whiffs and rumors about anything going on down there, or maybe get a better layout of like where radiation is the hardest and stuff like that, just from people that are coming into the church, since they're probably the poorer kind of people anyway.
And Josh, you're forgetting something very important.
Writing
Don't you need more
letter?
rockets for that rocket launcher?
Also true. That actually might not be a terrible idea.
Yeah, so I think you could use conversation at the church.
All right. Conversation, not my forte, but not terrible either. 13.
I love the rumors, by definition, are often untrue and never the full story. Finding that is your job. There was a lot of not true in that in Falco's delivery there.
He seemed like a very credible witness.
I don't know. If I were Falco, I would be telling you all kinds of tall tales just to mess you up. But, because it's funny.
I think he believed half of them.
Yeah, probably.
Like the cigar one.
Sure.
I got a 13 for conversation.
So like you're working the soup kitchen with Roof Diver, who's your like friend whom you've like kind of built a rapport with. He's the guy who went and hung out with his family and what have you, and like you guys are serving up some soup, and so how are you pitching it to him? Is it like that you're planning on going in there, or you're just curious, or like what's your tact in talking with?
Kind of, I guess, kind of curious, and also just do we see a lot of people that come from that area in here, and if so, are there like topics that I should keep out of, just because it might be traumatic because they're from a certain area and things like that.
Periodically there will be people who come into the church because they're just absolutely desperate, and the whatever sickness they're suffering from radiation exposure has become too much for them, and so they come in and they look for some like free medical care or just like blessings or what have you, right? And so Roof Diver kind of gets into, and I think inevitably this kind of draws a small conversation from others. Like you've served the last of the soup, and you guys are like gathered together in the back kitchen, with a few smokes or what have you, drinking a beer and just like talking about the nature of the old city center and all of that districts. And I think that it's a much different conversation than talking with Falco, or maybe even talking with the other contacts that you had, right? Like they're talking, everybody else is about like, so Falco was about the horrors. Wrench was about get in, get out. You don't want to spend any time there. And so Roof Diver and some of the others start getting a little bit more philosophical about the desperate plight of the people who actually have to live there, right? To be so desperate that you would live in a place where your children are continually exposed to radiation and impure water and that kind of stuff. And so they talk about, on occasion, the church has attempted to like bring in supplies of clean water, rudimentary medicines, the iodine tablet type thing, right? And try and do outreach with the people who are there, because it's so desperate. But at the same time, they're untrustful. They're not, the people who are living there don't necessarily trust people from outside, because they're going to steal what little they have, right? So if you've got scavvers who are coming in, you've got Maelstrom just like having absolute disregard for human life, right? They don't care if they blow up a building that happens to be a place where people have been living for 10 years, right? Like, so they try and keep their heads down. They might know, if you talk to a person in there, if you could get them to trust you, they might be a good source of information about what's currently happening and like the actual dangerous areas to be in. But the problem with the old city in general is, sure, there's hot zones. There's really hot zones like Arasaka Towers. You don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Right. But some of the other radiation got caught up in I don't know, heat trap isn't the right word, but maybe wind traps, right? Like radioactive materials accumulated in places because of storms and what have you. And then a building goes down, and a place that could have been safe before has now just become super hot because it's exposed that to the environment.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
And the people living there don't necessarily have, they're not going in with scientific equipment to determine where the hot zone is. They just notice that everything died and rather, right? So, I mean, his advice is, I think you've been working here long enough that they probably would have given you, because it's an old Roman Catholic church, right? I think it's non-denominational when it comes down to the actual religion, right?
Yeah.
But I think Holy Angels Church, they would have their own, I'm sure there's some sort of like specialized medallion that indicates like you're a person who's worked with the church. And so, they're kind of saying, look, if you find yourself there, the church has some sway, and like some people have heard, they might be more likely to talk to you if you show them the medallion than if you show them your gun.
Okay.
And most people are just going to run. So you're going to have to be mindful that all of these people by definition are living traumatized lives.
What if I show them both the medallion and the gun?
No.
It's kind of hard to hide some of these.
Yeah, right. Well, never mind the rocket launcher. No, that's...
It's like a gun and a badge, You're
Right,
kind of like police.
I'm still wearing it all as I'm serving soup. Like, rocket launcher getting in the way. Here's your soup.
But I think, you know, Atlas, as we've established that, I think that Atlas is kind of like, by nature, he's kind of like a happy-go-lucky guy, right? But he apparently feels things deeply when he like gets that emotional connection with a thing or some remorse, right? So,
yep.
I think, you know, that's an opportunity for Atlas.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
I think he would. My take on it is, and I mean, I don't want to tell you what your character is doing, but I can imagine him wanting to snuggle with his kitten after hearing these stories.
Pretty much, yeah. like he's openly weeping as he's telling him these stories.
And like Roof Diver is like, you know, it's like the good sort of masculinity, right? Where they're like, you know, it's a group hug when everything's done, as you've shared your stories and bound, you know, right? As opposed to like all the other stuff is like seeing whose chrome is brighter, right? Like it wasn't that kind of a conversation.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
it's not toxic masculinity. That's what I was going for. It's like,
yeah, there we go.
Anti-toxic masculinity. I mean, there still ends up being like war stories about like, yeah, I remember when I was in there was a rat as big as my head, right? But like inevitably the story kind of goes back to the desperation of the people in there.
Yeah. Which I guess at that point I'd see if I can get one of those badges and see if I can grab us some iodine capsules and stuff like that. Maybe something to take with us to give to people if we see any.
Okay.
Some like bottled water or something.
Yeah, I think
I bought kibble for that purpose.
I think at this point your service to the Holy Angels Church is sufficient that you would just have you'd be a medallion carrying member of the church.
That works.
Because you did another number of side jobs with the 6th Street, the 6th Street gang, which is
that's where most of my downtime is. If I'm not home, I'm there. So.
All right, so are you guys meeting up to share what you've learned, or like are you all converging at say Delver Dams for supplies? You're like all realizing at the same moment that you need stuff, or what's your plan?
I think we would probably get together because Angry Bob would definitely want to share what he's learned, and he might even play, assuming that Falco let him record, but he might play the recording for these guys to kind of get a chuckle out of things. But you know, the two big takeaways that Angry Bob has is we probably want suits, considering Falco was losing teeth, and we probably want to bring kibble or something else in case we do run into packs of dogs.
All right, well then really to Diver Dan's to go and get some iodine tablets. I already bought my kibble.
I can get us some iodine tablets.
Mm-hmm. How much are they going to run us?
I'll just grab them from the church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think
they probably want suits and maybe a radiation detector to see if we need to wear the suits.
I don't think we need to go that extreme.
Falco was losing teeth and,
well,
and a lung.
Okay. And nomads have been in and out. As long as we aren't planning a camping trip there, if you get in and out, we'll be all right.
What I can tell you guys is I see some of these people come in quite a bit. So
where are you guys meeting up to have this conversation? Like, I don't know that you guys actually have a hangout / hideout.
We don't have a hangout.
We don't.
So
we have
we're sitting at a diner. I think we're sitting at a diner.
Oops.
I think you're right.
Sorry. Ignore that.
Like
over peach pie.
Like a booth at a diner trying to...
Specific.
Yeah.
Tom's Diner is the chain, and Tom's Diner is where you had met with the makers. Like, you know, there's a number of Tom's Diners all around the city. But feel free to make.
We'll go to a different Tom's Diner because I don't want to meet up with that last gang who might have figured out that I was insulting them.
Well, if you want to have chocolate silk pie, APT, I'm not going to get in your way.
It's all kibble when it comes down to it. Just flavored kibble.
Yeah, that was the Cold Steel Bangers, were the guys you ran into previously, led by DEF CON. All right, so you're having pie at Tom's Diner. It's kind of late at night. You got Angry Bob's takeaways that you need to bring kibble for dogs and radiation suits. And only saying getting in and out as quickly as possible is better than having a suit, I think, if I understand correctly.
Diver Dan's has stuff. I'm not going to go in with a suit, but I will take the iodine tablet.
And I'm kind of trying to calm both of them down and just saying, listen, I know people that literally live inside there. It's not, as long as we're not staying there for weeks on end, we'll be okay.
So the camera technology in Cyberpunk RED is it CCD? Or is it like older tech? I'm asking because modern cameras can actually be affected by radiation. So if I'm looking through my camera lens and I'm seeing all sorts of fuzz on it, I know that maybe we don't want to go that direction.
I think both are an option because I think it's the time of RED, and so people are using whatever they can find. So
yeah, I was just wondering, given the timeline split, had that tech that been invented?
I don't know. So, I mean, I would say yes, given the state of technology for everything else, but I think everything's in play.
Okay.
And so I think it's a function of what you want your tech to, but at the same time, it's clearly obvious. It's obvious that the tech has not miniature, at least in 2045.
It's not small.
So whatever they're doing, it's like, it may be because of redundant systems or over engineering or whatever, but the cameras are not like, headset cams.
Right.
We get in 2077, technology appears to have started miniaturizing again, but in 2045, they're just, I think, cobbling together whatever they can get.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure it's miniaturized for the cyberware, but the handheld stuff is not as much of a priority because they want to sell the cyberware.
Right. Because you're going to be a media with an embedded camera. Why would you even haul around
Right. Haul around a giant camera like I am. I mean, I've got goals, but so what are the medications that are available? I know that like in 2077, they were talking about like taking radiation tablets or going through radiation sort of therapies, but is that around in 2045?
Allow me to attempt to use the Cyberpunkred index to not find the information that I need.
So. I didn't see anything in there. I've been looking. That's so you don't have to. We can leave that to the side if you want.
Yeah, I mean, hold on. I want to check out there's street.
I did notice that I could in my PDF of it that I have the ability to rename the bookmarks. So that's pretty nice. Whether or not I can save that renaming, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot of street drugs, but not actually getting into.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I imagine that there are some basic sort of like prophylactic anti-radiation drugs. They probably, I mean, aside from like straight up iodine, which is probably the best you're going to do for short term, right? Like if you actually, like if corpos were sending in people, they'd be going in with designer drugs meant to flush the radiation from your system and bind with any
particles. Like $5,000 a pill.
Yeah, like nanotech sort of like, because I think some of us have read Seven Eves, right? Like when you get into like what radiation does, if a radioactive particle gets into your body, bad things happen.
Oh yeah,
right? And no amount of iodine or any other treatment is going to save you. But if you're a corp, then you might have like, the nanotech cocktail that you could administer to both prevent and heal radiation damage. So I think mostly what you've got is just like mass market iodine tablets. And, Josh could have picked up a case of it from the church to cover you.
I think even if we're not getting suits, I do think air filters that would filter out that sort of dust is useful.
Yeah, and I think I got my Cyberpunk RED app, which has a shopping component to it, so it might be easier to use than the app or than the book. It's just drugs.
I do have very pointed complaints about the equipment section in the book.
I would love.
So far, all that I'm hearing though is that it probably would have been better if we had just taken the $10,000 from and become the little corporate guys.
Xanatech could have been bankrolling you. Like, you had your opportunity to go down the Xanatech route, and you could still meet with your, love-hate agent, right? Like,
I mean,
and honestly, you don't know why she wants you. I mean, she.
It's true.
Other than the fact that you killed all of her coworkers and nearly killed her, and.
But was that because it was an audition and she really wants to meet you all because you seem to be a capable crew, or because she wants to keep you all out?
Right.
That must be it.
That must be it.
I was just saying, there could be twists.
She wants us more. Well, she wants us more and more every day too.
Why don't we send in our leader and have him find out?
Oh, I don't think she could handle that kind of raw attraction.
All right, so you've got. So are you guys heading out to Delver Downs? Is there any other sort of like collective brainstorming research that you're doing while you're hanging out eating pie at Tom's Diner?
Angry Bob was gonna also try to find. I mean, the old map is probably easy to find on the CityNet, but like a Delver map, shall we say, of that area of the old Corp Center. He'd like to see if he can find something, because this server was located in the basement of this office building.
Sublevel 3.
So, like, an entrance that could get into the sublevels of Elysium Aeronautics would be very helpful. So we can get in and out.
Are we going to need like a grappling hook in case we have to go down an elevator?
Oh, I got one.
We got the magnetic ones.
Oh, nice.
Moons.
Although I think we only have 2.
So make a. So I think this would be a library use check. I mean, APT had already done a bunch of this, but this is going to be the media trying.
Trying to think what other tools we might need for this.
Education, right? Yeah. Straight library. This is straight library search, not rumors, right?
I think it depends. If you're looking for some sort of like formal sketch of the building's architecture circa 2022, then you might be. Then I think it would be library use. You do know, like, the corpos really locked down their blueprints. Like, they were considered commercial secrets, or like trade secrets, right? So like, it's not like you can go to City Hall and pull up a copy of the plans for the building, because no one would be insane enough to make that available to their enemies. But you might. I
used to do that all the time in Shadowrun.
Yeah, welcome to Cyberpunk RED.
Yeah.
So I mean, if that's what you're going, as opposed to hearing, like, on our hotspot, like, people who've ventured to that area and what they've learned. So I think if you're doing that, then it's rumors.
Okay.
It sounds like you're maybe going more for rumors.
Getting like the 2020, 2022 street map of the entrances to Elysium Aeronautics and maybe the lobby that would be public knowledge. That's one side of things that Bob would be looking for. But if we want to go with the other, would that be library use or conversation for the rumor side of things?
Conversation, I think. So, I mean, for that library use, you're able to pull up, 2020, I'm assuming you talk to 2020, or you just ping 2020 and he gives you that information.
Oh, yeah.
He's a history nerd.
That I was actually going to talk with him as well.
Desperate to talk with anybody about the thing that he loves.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I will definitely record him, because this is sounding like another maybe a smaller documentary that I could release before the edge running documentary. I got a 19 on the rumors to try and find, like if people have gone into Elysium Aeronautics or like know of ways into the sub basements.
So it is a tale of unending horror. Anyone and everyone who has gone to the sub basement of Elysium Aerospace has died. No one has returned.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's good to know.
How much are rockets again?
It is. It's an exceedingly so and no one knows why. Right, and so
it's because no one's returned to tell the tale.
Right. So this isn't one of those, but somebody returned with the map. There is no map, right? There's like sketches of the outside of Elysium Tower, and so it shows like the one entrance that remains open to get into like the lobby. And there's talk about like you're able to identify potential entrances into the facility based on what people were talking about. But that's what I was single thread replies with like, "Don't go there. It's death. Terrible things will happen to you." And then there's a stories of like pretty respectable edgerunners who went into the complex and were never seen again.
Okay. This sounds like we need to get paid more.
Well, negotiations are a thing. The other rumors that you hear about it, because 2020, most of 2020's knowledge is very niche to the historical period of like sort of the run up to the Burning 20s, right? And the immediate after effects. It doesn't really care about what's happening there now, except if somebody brings him some pre-Time of Red artifact of like, some little was it Tchotchke from like, some minor corp that got wiped out during the Fourth Corporate War, right? From the rumors, because like there's just like it's all just you can't tell what is real and what is bullshit when you're reading through this thread, because it starts to feed on itself, right? People are like, yeah, well, my buddy said, and then and what have you. But some salient facts repeat themselves several times when it comes to Elysium HQ. It was about a 60-story skyscraper that was built as a prototype micro-arcology. And it had like prototype radiation shielding. And it had wildlife like living inside of it. Like it was meant to be sort of a self-contained biosphere type thing as a corporate building. And since the bomb went off, its electrical systems were badly damaged because it is like on the edge of Old Corporate Center. And so whatever was keeping everything in check is no longer keeping it in check. And so there is rampant wildlife, plant life growing throughout the building, and like tendrils and vines crawling through broken windows and like falling down the sides of the building. There's nothing of that at ground level. But clearly weird things have happened at Elysium.
Okay.
And then that gives rise to like basically the Bigfoot set of rumors and like, what sort of weird sort of cryptids have emerged from this particular building, right? And then there's other people like, they were an aerospace firm. They weren't genetically engineering cryptids. Are you crazy? And they're like, you don't know what they were doing, right?
No, they were taking cryptids and putting cyberware in them so they could fly. That's what it is. They were trying to make Bat Squatch.
Who wouldn't want to?
Right. Yeah. So, talking with 2020 and looking up all that stuff, Bob's going to double the amount of kibble that he's taking. See if there's a set price for that, or
it's 10 Eurobucks.
Okay.
According to my handy Cyberpunk RED app.
Gotcha.
So is there any other sort of researchy type stuff that you're doing while you're hanging out or planning that you're doing while you're hanging out at Tom's Diner, or are you guys heading to Delverdan?
I didn't have anything on my agenda.
I think the only other thing, if we're going to go to Delverdan's and potentially get some radiation suits, which will just make us look utterly like tourists if we do that. However, that being said, the only other bright thing I think we could do is look for a second job in the zone to make it worth our while.
That's actually not a terrible idea.
If we're already walking in there.
There's always other stuff that we could grab from Elysium Aeronautics. Like after we turn on the server, that doesn't mean we can't, have APT grab all the data from it.
So that'd be the only other thing I would think of, is find a way to make a secondary profit.
Yeah, rockets aren't cheap, so if you guys want me to buy one, it's like 500 eddies for one rocket.
Yeah.
At least that's all.
I've been wanting a grenade launcher myself.
Well, you are doing all kinds of research, so I mean, I don't think it's, you have the deal. You could always go and try and up the amount you're being paid, but.
Yeah, but that's on APT's wheelhouse to see if you can increase the price on that, because
we can go back and
radiation we're going to eat
if we want. Yeah, maybe APT will message Priest saying, "No, the price has gone up. You didn't tell me this was a death trap."
All right, so let's do Delverdan, and then we'll come back to
Yep.
Because that'll help inform, what your budget needs to be.
Yeah.
So you get to Delverdan's. It is basically just sort of like a flea market in the form of a shop. He's got the big, huge, tall, rusted steel and iron racks, right? Just packed full of gear. He's in a cyber chair and kind of comes over. He's got a number of small drones that he operates to be able to fetch gear off of the shelves and what have you. He's like, welcome to Delverdan's. Looking to head into the hot zone. You guys look like so is everybody there, or is it just
Yeah.
I can tell by your skin that you've never been into the hot zone. I got some stuff that can help with that. No. You want some lead line duct tape? And it's just one of those things that he just has on hand, right? So he reaches down to the side of his chair, pops open the compartment, and
oh goodness,
20 eddies right here. And you can see in the back of the room, lit under lights, is a plexiglass case with a pristine radiation suit. And then next to it, and then there's a price tag, 1,500 EVs, never used. And then next to it, hanging on a series of hooks, are a number of other radiation suits with a variety of prices labeled on them, which are all in various states of repair / disrepair. It depends on your opinion of his patch jobs.
The lead line duct tape. Mm-hmm.
Right. So you see a lot of them that are clearly have been duct taped, or they've been patched together and then restitched. Right. So, or additional cloth like Kevlar laid on top of it. And then the price tags start at 500 and go down from there.
And go down.
And I mean, a normal, actual, honest to God, the good scientific sort of the thing you would have worn if you were a professional back in the day radiation suit is not easy to use, not easy to wear, bulky, difficult to move in, right? Think of your classic, radiation.
You got the
suit
super
sort of
thick gloves that you can't really
Yeah.
do anything
how about-
dexterous with.
How about just a plain old Geiger counter?
It's like, sure, I got that. Functional or non-functional? I'm just kidding. They all work, mostly. 100 EBs.
Before handing over the money, Bob would like to test a few of them because I'm sure there are things that it will go off on in this shop.
Just take it right up to Dan.
Yeah, yeah. Just wave it around, wave it toward Dan, wave it
I'll
toward
throw in
other
25.
stuff.
This is
Wave it
kind of
toward the
where
old
it
radiation suits.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's like...
David, I'm throwing
not-
in 25.
Same.
Okay,
So is everyone throwing in 25?
I think so.
Yeah, I guess so.
right.
Atlas wasn't gonna, but all the cool kids are doing it.
You're breaking my bank. I'm down to 1275 now.
All right, I've got it on my sheet, and now I'm at 1175. So it's a race to the
Oh
bottom.
man, you're up there.
Filters?
With me, huh?
Air filters.
Okay.
I was gonna say the air filter is probably the only thing that I'm worried about. Other than that, I'm just gonna do the iodine.
So there is rapid detox, which costs 200 EBs, which when injected, the target who is affected by a drug, poison, or intoxicant is immediately purged of all of its effects. No indication that would actually work on radiation, but there are other things downtown that can kill you. Let's see. Binoculars. Oh, anti-smog breathing mask. Look, we can call that as good. It's 20 EBs.
Oh, yeah, I'll take one of those.
Oops. They have something under clothing. Oh, they have all kinds of clothing, but that doesn't really help you. You could look sharp doing it, but I don't think that really helps. Let's see if there's anything under armor that's relevant.
You said 20 EBs for the breather mask?
For the breather mask.
Okay.
All right, breather mask, iodine tablets, and some nice bottled water for some of the people that we might meet. And a badge that says, "I'm a friend," with a smiley face.
All right.
No sign that says free hugs?
Not from these people.
It's the radiation. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Was there any other... are you buying any of the radiation suits?
I can't afford them.
Yep.
I mean, I could,
Most-
but the bargain bin radiation suit probably not worth it.
The breather will probably cover. The most dangerous thing when walking into a zone like this is the particles that you breathe in. So
Yeah.
the breather will probably take care of most of it.
I think what Bob will do is get a set of clothing to wear into the hot zone that he can just throw away when he gets out.
Yeah.
That's not a terrible idea, actually. Do you have like lead underwear?
No, but I have duct tape.
Oh no.
You buy any, is anybody buying any of the lead line duct tape?
I am going to buy some of the lead line duct tape
Right,
because
40
you never know. This is how much?
40 EBs.
Can we haggle?
Only if
On
we
any of
never
this
want to
stuff?
go on the mission, David.
Fair. Totally fair. Turns out CDC.gov has a FAQ about radiation emergencies.
I want it stated right now that I did not delay anything this session. This was not me.
Hey, you wanted planning.
We're down the rabbit holes of
What color of radiation suit do you think?
Yeah.
Well, he does offer the duct tape in like 6 attractive colors of like neon pink, neon green, neon blue.
Oh yeah,
all about that.
Yeah,
orange.
neon.
Neon green.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, style over substance, man.
that's right. Look, you never
I
know
do
if
have
you're
to
going to
add,
need
you know, if we really wanted to plan, what nuclear material was used in the suit?
No. We don't want to play. We want to play the game.
I'm just saying, is it
Again,
a
I need it
cesium or
stated.
is it a iridium, plutonium,
What?
strontium?
What
It's
brand of
amazing
coffee
how much
do they
data
serve
is on this
inside the
CDC
hot
website.
zone?
Well, I see what
Oh my
David's
God.
going to be reading for the rest of the day.
All right. So, is there anything else you're doing prep wise, research wise, before APT reaches out to Priest?
I get a car so we can drive. That's all.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I mean,
I can think
I
of
don't
lots
know.
of other things, but whether or not they're useful and
Yeah, I mean-
and or over planning.
No one can
The
blame me for any of
downside-
this.
Here's the reason I don't want to get a rocket. If we're in a very flimsy architecture to begin with, I don't want to create an explosion that might topple down everything on top of us.
Well, you don't have to use the rocket inside. I'm thinking, if Maelstrom gangers are coming up on the street, a rocket would be really nice to, cut that interview short. But yeah, not inside.
You see what you're doing? You're being the little devil on my shoulder. And the problem is, I don't have an angel over here right now.
That's your cat.
there
It's
you
my
go.
cat.
All right, APT. So you're gonna bring up Priest.
Yeah, I'm going to ring up Priest and say, Priest, we've done a bunch of research on this, and the price has tripled.
He
I like your negotiation.
Priest takes a deep sigh, and he's like, "Well, I guess you found out about the other edgerunners, didn't you?"
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of research on this one myself, and I can't say that you're wrong. So I can go back to the client and see what we can do here. Near as I can tell, at least 4 crews have gone into this hellhole. And I value you guys. You've been pretty good. So 15.
You know what? Go back to them with 20. We'll settle for 15.
So what is the
And,
total? So I want to make sure we're clear on what we're negotiating, right? So it was 5 up front and 5 on the back end.
Right.
What are you now asking? So it was total before, it was 10. So what are you
10.
asking for now?
So I'm asking, we want to get 30. Go back to them and demand 40. They'll talk you down. Let yourself be talked down to 30. We're good.
I like it.
And so it would be 20 up front, 20 after is what we're talking,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, money no good if we can't
Tell them
spend it.
that this thing could require repairs inside too. So
Yeah. We don't know the condition of anything in there, so there may be repair work we got to do. I mean, there's equipment costs. You know how this goes, Priest.
they price
At the
this at
Maelstrom
pristine.
gangers.
And have you heard about Maelstrom? Because let me tell you some stories about Maelstrom.
So I've been guessing that you give Priest like the info dump of all of like Are you giving like all of the urban legend horror stories, or are you just doing like distilled down to what you think is reasonable?
I'm distilling it down to the facts enough to make the point that the risk is high here. Therefore,
just show him clips of Falco's interview.
That's actually a good point.
So,
just the dental work alone is going to cost us some money.
So Priest is like, look, I'm in your corner.
My teeth are worth more.
Right. So, because Priest and APT go back a ways, so he goes out, like he pings his client, and there's almost an immediate response of acceptable at 40,000.
Oh, God.
We asked for too little.
And he's like, he passes you along the response, which is acceptable. Do not fail.
All right. I'll go back to the
asked
crew
for
and
double
say,
that.
I feel like maybe we left money on the table, but
Yeah.
Go back again.
no.
It's too late now.
This is
We
as
can
good
only
as
go
it's
to
gonna
that
get.
well once.
Whoever wants this is serious. So, all right. I've done my part. Omen?
I get a car.
All right. So I think this is going to be a good point to pause because I have some homework to do. And next time we will be doing the Honest to God run. So venturing into the glow.
Cool.
All right.
And so we each got we were getting the 20,000.
You get 20,000 up front.
Okay, so that's 5,000 each of us.
Woo! Now I've got some money.
Yep.
Yeah, let's hope we live long enough to spend it.
Can I pay my next month's rent ahead of time so that if
No,
something
don't
does happen
do
to
that.
me?
No, you might not live.
No. Don't pay anything ahead of time. Don't
I'm saying if I die, at least my cat has a place to live for the month.
Pretty sure you
You know
can.
what? For 250 eddies, I will go and take your cat. I will make sure to look after your cat for 250 eddies.
Aw, that's so sweet.
I'm just so kind like that. Give the kitty a home in the nomad camp.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it would love it there.
There's some kids to play with.
Thank you, Ken. This was fun.
It's gonna ride around
Thank
on radio controlled trucks.
FYI, this is why I wore the kitty cat shirt today.
So
right.
David.
Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you everybody for joining us. We are gonna play this again next week. It'll probably come out for 2 weeks for all of you. But in the meantime, head on over to youtube.com at Layer of Secrets is our stuff there. And layerofsecrets.com will have all the other info. See you soon.